Part 12. Heaven Swallowing Record. Author, Fengqing Yang. Chapter 111. Boom. The green underworld vine rolled like a giant snake, and the whole cave was trembling. Before the ghost-faced ape arrived, the green underworld vine had already killed everyone inside the cave. Where are the people? After turning over the fireworks caused by the talisman, the ghost-faced ape rushed inside and found that the surrounding area was already empty. Impossible, the ghost-faced ape was stunned. This place is deep underground. If Wu Yu rushes in, there is no way he will disappear into thin air. However, after he entered, he actually saw that the cave was completely empty. There was no Wu Yu or Lan Shuiyu at all. Judging from his ghost-faced ape's sense of smell, Wu Yu really disappeared out of thin air. Roar! The ghost-faced ape roared angrily, rolled the green underworld vine in his hand, and smashed the inside of the cave. The rocks rolled, the cave shook, and almost collapsed, but Wu Yu was still not there. The ghost-faced ape was confused, struggling between self-confidence and doubt. Such an incredible thing made him mentally confused. He hates it. He was fooled by the bloodline he left behind. Kong was overjoyed. The most depressing thing is that when he was happy, he was stabbed by Wu Yu. What kind of monster dares to run wild in our Tongtian sword sect? At this moment, a deep, old, and domineering voice shook almost half of the immortal Fate Valley. Apparently, Elder Shentu already knew of his existence. Roar! The ghost-faced ape roared angrily. No matter how unwilling he was, he could only flee in confusion. He thought he would kill all the cultivators here and then leave. Unexpectedly, Wu Yu appeared, disrupted everything, and forced him in such a dangerous situation. Phew! An almost invisible shadow rushed out of the underground world. Run! Run! The ghost-faced ape knew that because of his unwillingness, he had stayed in Xuanhuan Valley for too long, which was enough time for Elder Shentu to keep an eye on him. Now, it was him who was in danger. Whoosh! He was quite embarrassed, climbing over the mountains and forests. At this moment, there was an explosion in the sky. The ghost-faced ape looked up and saw a giant net made of transparent thin threads, quietly falling, and the target was him. Green underworld vine. The green underworld vine in his hand rolled upwards, and the giant snake came out of its hole and rushed into the sky, intending to shake open the giant net. Ding ding ding. Unexpectedly, the power of the giant net was terrifying, and the mana flowing on it completely suppressed the ghost-faced ape. The ghost-faced ape was not able to escape far, and was directly covered by the giant net. For a moment, he was trapped in the fishing net and rolled down. On the ground. Break! The ghost-faced ape roared violently and used all his strength to fight against the giant net. During his struggle, several nearby mountains were destroyed. However, the giant net tightened even tighter, almost tearing the ghost-faced ape into pieces. Old Ghost Shentu. While the ghost-faced ape was struggling, an old man appeared around. He was holding the demon fishing rod in one hand. The thin line on the demon fishing rod was connected with the giant net. Although this giant net was simple, in fact it was formed by the condensed magic power of Elder Shentu. Rumor has it that Elder Shentu is the third strongest person in the Tongtian sword sect. If it hadn't been for old age and a step too late, he should have reached the golden elixir realm long ago. Ghost-faced ape, Elder Shentu's expression changed. When he saw the ghost-faced ape, he already had a rather ominous premonition. This is an old demon who has been cultivating for more than 900 years, almost 1,000 years. It is much longer than his monastic career. It is said that there are already 9 demon essence cores, which are the strongest in the large territory surrounding the Bibo Mountains. One of several monsters. The disciples guarding around the immortal Fate Valley are basically at the 7th level of Qi condensation realm. If this ghost-faced ape wants to sneak in, of course they can't stop it. You are so brave, You dare to break into the territory of my Tongtian sword sect? Elder Shentu shouted angrily. In fact, in the entire Tongtian sword sect, there are not many people, less than 5, who can subdue the ghost-faced ape so quickly. At this time, Elder Shentu had not thought that this ghost-faced ape would dare to do such a thing. After all, in the past, even the 1,000-year-old demons with demon elixirs would not dare to do this. They did not have to directly antagonize the Tongtian sword section. In fact, they could barely get along with each other over the years. The experience in the Immortal Valley is over. All disciples of the Tongtian sword sect, please light the red flame soaring talisman and let me know your location and take you away. Elder Shentu is naturally concerned about the safety of his disciples. There must be monsters like the ghost-faced ape here. We have to take them out first. His voice is enough to echo throughout the entire Immortal Valley, showing how powerful his magic power is. This is a strong man who has opened the 10 sources of energy around him. However, after a long while, no one responded. It was only then that Elder Shentu had a rather ominous premonition. His expression changed drastically, and looking at the grim-faced ape, murderous intent rose. What are you looking at? Stop messing around. All the disciples of your Tongtian sword sect here have been eaten by me. They all taste good, ghost-faced ape smiled. Because of Wu Yu, he wasted time and was caught by Elder Shentu. Now he couldn't break free. He naturally knew his end. But how could an old monster like him be afraid? Elder Shentu was trembling with anger. The experience in Xuanhuan Valley is held every year, and nothing has ever happened. That is because demons that have surpassed the 7th level of Qi condensation realm or above will not do what the ghost-faced ape did today. However, it is obvious that no one responded to him and used the red flame soaring talisman, so what the ghost-faced ape said was that he was inseparable. Elder Shentu took out a flute and blew it, and the sound resounded throughout the Bibo Mountains. For a moment, hundreds of thousands of people in the Bibo Mountains looked here, wondering what was going on here. Whoosh! Tongtian Immortal Palace. Liulai Immortal Palace. The 2 immortal palaces suddenly shot out 2 rays of light, one golden and one blue, shooting towards the direction of the Immortal Fate Valley. Those were 2 swords, and on the swords were 2 people. Feng Xia, Lan Huayun. Only when there is a major event in the sect, Elder Shentu will blow the wind and cloud flute to let the 2 supreme leaders, the leader and the guardian, arrive. Tear. On the horizon, 2 bright rays of light were about the same, one golden and one blue. In the blink of an eye, they pierced the eyes of Elder Shentu. His Feng Xia and Lan Huayun fell in front of the ghost-faced ape. Elder Shentu knelt on the ground tremblingly, his eyes already full of tears. His voice trembled, and he said with a trembling voice, "Headmaster, guardian, old man has sinned." He didn't even notice that the ghost-faced ape had sneaked into the Immortal Fate Valley. According to him, except for Tang Basian, who used the red flame soaring talisman to leave Immortal Fate Valley on the first day, all the other disciples have been killed and devoured by him. At this moment, it was absolutely silent. Even Feng Shui and Lan Huayun were a little unsteady when they heard the news. Looking at the faces of the 2 people, they were as cold as icebergs, with a feeling of calm before the storm. When they heard Elder Shentu's description, the 2 did not blame him. After all, this was something that the Tongtian sword sect had never done before. In order to let the disciples get even with the greatest degree of experience, they will not come in. Whoosh! The 2 men wielded swords and searched throughout the Immortal Fate Valley. They were strong men of the golden elixir, so they naturally had their own way of searching. After a while, Feng Shui and Lan Huayun both appeared in the cave where Wu Yu was. The blood is the thickest here. At least 8 people have died. Lan Huayun's voice was trembling even as he spoke. Shui Yu, you were. She was here, and she could vaguely find the aura left by Lan Shui Yu, but it was obvious that Lan Shui Yu was no longer here. Lan Huayun almost went crazy. Feng Xiya, this shocking event happened. As the leader, Feng Xiya has this responsibility. While she was yelling angrily, Feng Shui also left here. Seeing his back, Lan Huayun suddenly thought that his disciple Wu Yu might also be on the death list. She chased after him, and not long after, the two of them were back in front of the ghost-faced ape. The ghost-faced ape smiled and said, "Isn't it a surprise? Feng Xiya, don't be in a hurry to kill me. I'll analyze it for you." He struggled for a moment and continued, "Let me put it bluntly, first of all, you disciples were all killed by me. Your disciples of the Tongtian sword sect have killed many of my fellow demon clansmen over the years. It's a gift in return. You have to accept it. How can there be such a good thing in this world? You are only allowed to kill me, but we are not allowed to kill you, right?" "Shut up." Lan Huayun stretched out her hand to form a sword, and suddenly a blue sword energy condensed into ice and penetrated the body of the ghost-faced ape, nailing it to the ground. "Don't forget, this burst of spiritual energy in the Bibo Mountains will only bring harm to you, but no good. You must have guessed that the 7 ghosts of the Red Sea from the East China Sea have formed an alliance with the Xuanhuan Dao section. No, they will attack your Tongtian sword sect in the future. The 7 ghosts of Shihei want to bloodbath the Bibo Mountains and steal all your magic weapons, Taoist magic, and fairy spirits. The purpose of the Xuanhuan Dao sect is even simpler. They just want to you, the blue waves of the mountains, want your mountain gate." So, Lan Huayun looked ferocious. Maybe Lan Huayun knew what the ghost-faced ape said. Xuanhuan Daozong, as a righteous man, actually colluded with ghost cultivators. Elder Shentu didn't know and couldn't believe it. According to the rules of Dongsheng Shenzhou, good and evil are incompatible. In order to possess the Tongtian sword sect, a sect with 3 times the spiritual energy, the Xuanhuan Dao sect actually did such a thing. So, I, the ghost-faced ape, am under the command of the 9 Immortals. If you dare to kill me, you are provoking the 9 Immortals. The 9 Immortals will definitely join the Xuanhuan Dao sect and the Shihei 7 ghosts to carve up your Tongtian sword sect. Let me live. I can also advise the 9 Immortals not to wade into this muddy water." Having said this, the ghost-faced ape was a little proud. Lan Huayun asked, 9 Immortals? It's the 1,000-year-old fox demon that has condensed the demon elixir, right? You are really ignorant. The 9 Immortals are the only kings of the demon clan in this area of thousands of miles. All the demon clans surrender to her. If you offend her, your Tongtian sword sect will make things worse. The 3 forces will be enough to kill you. Old fate. This is why the ghost-faced ape is still stubborn." Lan Huayun hesitated, her eyes were gloomy, and she imagined what if the 9 Immortals brought many demons with them, plus the Xuanhuan Dao sect who colluded with ghost cultivators, and the 7 ghosts of the Red Sea from the East China Sea. Each of the 3 forces is not much weaker than the Tongtian sword section. If they really want to fight to the death, the Tongtian sword sect will be in danger. The 9 Immortals were not near the Bibo Mountains, so she didn't include her. Even if she had 10,000 intentions to kill the ghost-faced ape, she had to doubt the power of the 9 Immortals at this time. Haha, ghost-faced ape laughed. At this time, Feng Shui said to Elder Shentu, "Let him go. /U003CE /U003E /U003CE /U003F. Follow the official QQ public account 17K, ID, Love 17K, read early, and keep abreast of the latest information /U003C /E /U003E /U003C /E /U003E. Heaven Swallowing Record. Author, Feng Qing Yang. Chapter 112. Let him go. Elder Shentu was very unwilling, because the other party was under the command of Juxian, so he was going to let him go after causing such a bloody incident. Yes, Feng Xiya nodded. Lan Huayun bit her lips, also unwilling. Okay, Elder Shentu put away the fishing rod, and at this time, the ghost-faced ape regained his freedom. Thank you, the three of you. After I go back, I will definitely advise Juxian, and even persuade Juxian to help you three through the difficulties. The ghost-faced ape smiled, turned around, and left quickly. At this time, Feng Xiya suddenly had a golden sword in his hand. He made a move in an instant. In the blink of an eye, he appeared behind the ghost-faced ape, and the golden sword in his hand had pierced the ghost-faced ape. The ghost-faced ape fell softly to the ground. You. What responded to him was Feng Xia's indifferent face, and the sword in his hand. Swish. The shadow of the 10,000 swords instantly divided the ghost-faced ape into tens of thousands of pieces. For a moment, the ghost-faced ape was dead. Huh. Feng Shui suddenly turned back, his body and face were stained with a lot of blood. There was a dead silence. If this happens, the 1,000-year-old fox demon will definitely join us and cause trouble for us. Lan Huayun wanted to consider the overall situation. Even if Lan Shuiyu was dead, she held back. But Feng Shui couldn't hold back. If the fox demon didn't want to join, the ghost-faced ape wouldn't come to provoke. Don't be naive, get ready to welcome the three parties to fight. Feng Shui raised his long sword and prepared to leave. Perhaps, because of the change in spiritual energy, there are too many jealous people, and the Green Mountains are destined to flow into rivers of blood. Since ancient times, demons have been cunning, and now the Tongtian sword sect has become fat meat. Even the Xuanhuan Dao sect, which is a righteous sect, is jealous, let alone demons and ghost cultivators. Pass the order down. At noon today, push all the demons in the Demon Suppression Tower to the Fighting Immortal platform and behead them for public display, to sacrifice to the spirits of the disciples who died in the Immortal Valley. Today, it is destined to set off a storm in the entire Bibo Mountains. These dead disciples will surely make many people who care about him cry in pain, such as Su Yanli. Actually falling. He and Lan Shuiyu actually fell down, falling endlessly. If they continue like this, they will fall to the ground in horror. Wu Yu found that there were dark rocks all around, and it was very dead. This bottomless pit was not wide, with a diameter of about 5 feet, but there was a force pulling him and Lan Shuiyu, so that the two could not move to the wall and could only continue to fall. That Lan Shuiyu thought that he was dead and was falling into the 10,000 hells, so he kept screaming like crazy. Ming Long, what's going on? Wu Yu remembered that it was Ming Long who reminded him, so the current situation happened. What kind of attitude is this? How can you talk to me like this? Ming Long appeared in front of him. Seeing his embarrassed appearance, he suddenly laughed happily. Well, may I ask, what happened? In this thrilling situation, Wu Yu had to give in to her. In fact, Wu Yu was grateful to her. If it weren't for her, he would probably have been killed by the ghost-faced ape. Okay, I won't tease you anymore. I just found that there were some traces of Taoism from my time on the stone wall before. I guessed it was a hidden passage, but I didn't expect it to be true. Your time, 120,000 years ago. Ming Long said that she existed before the first UN. Who knows, maybe even longer. I don't have much ability now, only a little perception left, Ming Long said indifferently. Then where will I fall now? What should I do? Wu Yu was anxious. If he fell down, he would definitely die. How should I know? Ming Long widened his eyes, looking like he had nothing to do with it, really asking for a beating. Okay. Wu Yu really couldn't do anything with her. Stop yelling, he shouted angrily. Lan Shuiyu finally rested, but her face was still pale. Her arms were still tightly wrapped around Wu Yu. She cried, Wu Yu, I'm dead, right? Yes, that's right. Wu Yu was too lazy to pay attention to this idiot. He had been trying to move towards the surrounding walls, but the suction force below was too huge. Wow! Hearing this, Lan Shuiya cried even more miserably. Fortunately, the demon-suppressing stick was still on him. Wu Yu gritted his teeth, took out the demon-suppressing stick with difficulty, held one end, and then moved to one side while falling. In fact, it was difficult for him to succeed in this situation, but he thought of a way. As long as he sprayed magic power forward, it would naturally go to the back. Bang! At this time, his demon-suppressing stick pierced the wall next to him. Bang bang bang! The surrounding rocks exploded, and the demon-suppressing stick tore a huge hole in the wall, but fortunately, the descent speed slowed down, otherwise he would have fallen to death. Lan Shuiyu had been unwilling to let him go, so she saved her life. Wu Yu really wanted to throw her down, but considering that it was she who had ignited the red flame sky rising talisman just now, the two of them had a chance to escape, so he saved her life. Even so, the two of them continued to descend, but the speed was not as terrifying. The deeper they went, the slower they went. But when Wu Yu finally stopped in the air, he looked down and could vaguely see light and the ground below, which should be the bottom. Looking up again, after falling for so long, it would probably take a month or even longer to climb out. After thinking about it, Wu Yu decided to go down first, maybe there were other ways out. This chapter is not over, please click on the next page to continue reading. Obviously, if he didn't use the demon-subduing stick to support him, both he and Lan Shuiyu would have fallen to the ground to death, or they would have been smashed to pieces. Where is this? Lan Shuiyu looked around in shock. At this time, Wu Yu pulled out the demon-subduing stick, and the two of them fell to the ground. After scanning around, they found that this was a closed chamber. Deep underground, there was no way out. The only way was above the head. Boom! The moment Wu Yu fell, something unexpected happened, that is, in the endless long passage above his head, countless rocks were moving, and they were crowded together in the blink of an eye. A passage disappeared in front of Wu Yu's eyes in the blink of an eye. Completely closed to death. They stood in a small room deep underground, complaining that the sky was not responding and the earth was not working. If they hadn't started condensing their energy and stopped breathing ordinary air, they would have been suffocated to death in this closed room. Even so, if it is not replenished, the mana will be exhausted by the body, and you will always die in it. If I had known, I wouldn't have come down and climbed out directly. Looking at all this, Wu Yu regretted it. Lan Shuiyu's pretty face was covered with dirt, and she stared blankly at the narrow and closed underground chamber, feeling a little numb for a moment. Wu Yu, I should not be dead. She finally felt normal. Wu Yu was not in the mood to tease her and nodded. This should be a small room deep underground. We shouldn't be able to get out. How do you know that knocking on the rocks over there will lead you here? She looked at Wu Yu blankly. Luck. So, although we were not killed by demons, we are trapped and die in this deep underground. Speaking of this, Lan Shuiyu burst into tears again. She was born in a greenhouse. Although there were also murders, but faced with such the monsters and such a deep underground almost made her completely collapse. Maybe. Wu Yu also felt that maybe death was just delayed. However, he didn't give up that easily. The passage left by the predecessors, although it may be more than 100,000 years ago, may provide a way to survive. He noticed that there was a bright light around him, so he stood up and observed his surroundings. The source of light? In the middle of this small room, there is a 3-foot-high table. The table is full of dust. There is a futon on it. I don't know what the material of the futon is. It has been preserved for so many years. And on the futon, there is actually a gray old skeleton sits in this place. Skeletons. Obviously, this person died here. In addition, it is surrounded by rock walls, which are very neat, as if they were small chambers cut out with swords. Ah, Lan Shuiyu was startled by the skeleton. What's this? Wu Yu stood in front of the skeleton and stared at the bright spot. The skeleton had a long history, but the bright spot seemed to be a spar, even though it was covered with heavy dust. It was a sword-shaped crystal that was somewhat similar to the golden jade sword heart. It existed above the pelvic bone of the skeleton. Standing there, it was difficult to see clearly what it was because of too much dust. Lan Shuiyu also discovered this thing. She looked at it for a while and said, "Strange, why does it look like a fairy root? Is it this person's fairy root? I have never heard that fairy roots can still exist after death. So it should be the immortal root he left behind? Just kidding, how can an immortal root be preserved for such a long time? It shouldn't be. From the appearance, it looks like it is a fairy root, but I don't know what kind of fairy root it is. From a logical point of view, this place is too old. Even crystal-type fairy roots cannot exist for such a long time. Therefore, Lan Shuiyu is a bit puzzling. No matter, just take it and take a look." She was about to stretch out her hand. Wu Yu held her palm and pushed it away. "What?" Lan Shuiyu withdrew her palm. Now she was more reserved and didn't want Wu Yu to touch her. "It's not yours, don't touch it." Since he came to this place, he had some guesses. Maybe there was something left by his predecessors here? Obviously, if there is, how could Lan Shuiyu take away the thing in front of him? "You! Get out of here!" Wu Yu stretched out his hand to pick up the weird thing. At 1800 hours this afternoon, the first chapter of the first volume of the Dragon Blood Extra Chapter Dragon Blood God of War will be updated on the QQ official account and the directory of Dragon Blood God of War. Please follow the QQ official account Feng Qingyang, open QQ, click on the contact, click on the public account in the upper right corner to search for Feng Qingyang, and follow the one who is not a tribe. /U003CE /U003E /U003CE /U003F. Follow the official QQ account 17K, ID, Love 17K, read early, and keep abreast of the latest information /U003C/E /U003E /U003C/E /U003E. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Heaven Swallowing Record. Author, Feng Qingyang. Chapter 113. He held the spar in his hand, shook off the dust on it, and found that it was a shining stone. As for whether it was a fairy root, he didn't know. Call. When he took away the spar, the skeleton was scattered into fine dust due to being touched, and spread on the ground, which even shocked Lan Shuiyu. "Ming Long, is this an immortal root?" Wu Yu asked in a low voice. "Who told you, little brat, to call me by my name? Did you do me any favors by saving your life just now?" Ming Tong said, blinking his shining eyes. "Peerless little beauty, is this the root of immortality?" These 5 words were really difficult for Wu Yu to say, but Ming Tong enjoyed them. Taiwan Novel Network. Rightward arrow. "Girl, I'm in a bad mood. I'm too lazy to tell you. Don't disturb me. I'm going to bed with that." She really disappeared. Alright. Wu Yu really had nothing to do with her. He called her a few times, but she ignored him, so he stopped asking any more questions. He put the crystal stone into his bag and began to think about another question: how to get out. Lan Shuiyu stared at him from the side and asked angrily, "As the saying goes, everyone who sees the treasure has a share, so you just keep it to yourself." Although she didn't think it was a fairy root, but in a place like this, it could be preserved to this day, so it couldn't be a mortal thing. "Say it again and I'll cut your tongue." This woman had caused him a lot of trouble before, and she still had murderous intentions. Although she was gone now, Wu Yu still hated her. Although a man and a woman were alone in the same room, and she was a charming little beauty, Wu Yu still hated her. You had nothing to think about. It would be terrible if he really got involved with her and couldn't get rid of her. Love debt is not so easy to repay. You don't let me seize the opportunity, otherwise I will make you beg for mercy, Lan Shuiyu said angrily. Wu Yu ignored her. He wandered around the small room and observed it for a long time. He found that except for the skeleton from before, there was nothing else here. The stone platform in the center is just a rock, nothing special. Wu Yu tried knocking on the rocks around him, above his head, and under his feet, and found that they were all solid. In other words, the passage above my head has been closed, and I am trapped in the deepest underground. There is no other passage to get out. This made him feel a little worried. After all, being trapped to death so deep underground is a terrifying thing. The passage I came down to can be closed like this. It's really incredible. Who has such means to do this? Wu Yu was still calm at this time. On the other side, Lan Shuiyu was also looking for possible passages around her. After a while, she also discovered the truth, and then she sat down on the ground in a daze and burst into tears. I didn't expect that I, Lan Shuiyu, would be trapped and die in this place. Her crying was so miserable. Shut up. Wu Yu thought she was too noisy and yelled angrily before asking her to stop crying. She huddled in the corner, hugging her knees and sobbing. Before her death, she should have no intention of competing with Wu Yu anymore. Wu Yu didn't notice. He was wondering if there would be something like a mechanism. As long as he opened it, he could leave here. Therefore, he did not miss any inch of the land and began to search for any strange places by tapping, mana penetration and other methods. If you don't want to die here, get up and help. In fact, Lan Shuiyu was not bad-hearted, but she was too arrogant. Faced with a life and death blow this time, her heart would definitely change. Under Wu Yu's instructions, she obediently joined him and tried every possible means to find a way to leave. A man and a woman, in a silent underground chamber, the heartbeats of both parties and the breaths of both parties are so strong. Wu Yu was lucky to have pulled her down, otherwise the loneliness he felt in this place would have been terrifying enough with no one alive. Maybe master, senior sister, they thought I was dead and were sad for me. I must go out. Wu Yu was always full of energy and didn't want to give up. And, wow! After searching for several days, nothing was found. Every inch of the place was searched. When Lan Shuiyu thought of Lan Huayun, she squatted on the ground and cried. Wu Yu gritted his teeth and tried again, more carefully. Wu Yu, you bullied me before and I asked you to kneel down. Then there were so many disputes that made me want to kill you. After experiencing so many lives and deaths, I feel that I don't hate you anymore, Lan Shuiyu suddenly said. She looked at Wu Yu blankly. Okay, Wu Yu nodded. It was a good thing to resolve the conflict. He didn't want to be trapped in this place and have to fight with this woman. Thinking of that rough kiss, Lan Shuiyu couldn't hold back any regrets. She was in a daze and looked up at Wu Yu, who was still persisting. She didn't speak but never turned her eyes away. Look what I'm doing. She was alone and could not escape Wu Yu's eyes in any of her looks or movements. Who's looking at you? Shameless. Lan Shuiyu quickly turned away and huddled in the corner. Although her dress was covered with mud, her delicate face was still unstained by the mud. Don't turn your head and don't peek. I want to change my clothes, Lan Shuiyu said. Send it to me, but I won't even look at it. Wu Yu's mind was not on her. He knew that she might have a good impression of him after some things happened, but Wu Yu really didn't like her. Even in this underground world, he would not give in. Ta-ta! The sound of Wu Yu tapping on the wall continued. We are doomed. Lan Shuiyu has always been pessimistic. This chapter is not over, please click on the next page to continue reading. Stop talking. The more pessimistic she became, the more irritable Wu Yu became. Since he couldn't find the mechanism to leave, he became angry, took out the demon-subduing stick, and began to smash the surrounding walls and rocks. There is no way out. I, Wu Yu, am going to find a way out. Boom boom boom. Suddenly the rocks exploded. Lan Shuiyu was so frightened that she screamed and hid in a corner. She looked at Wu Yu in surprise. After a short time, all the surrounding rocks were shattered and rolled down at Wu Yu's feet. There is a discovery. 3 of the walls were just ordinary underground rocks that shattered under the demon-suppressing stick. Theoretically, it was possible for Wu Yu to dig out passages on these 3 walls by constantly digging. However, with such a deep underground, he would probably die on the way. There was only 1 wall left, but Wu Yu smashed the surface rock, and a black wall appeared. The wall had a smooth surface and was artificially carved. It was definitely not a natural thing. After discovering this, Wu Yu seemed to have found light in the dark night. He immediately went crazy and smashed the surrounding rocks. Only then did he realize that the wall was actually a stone tablet embedded in the underground space. The same thing happened behind the stone tablet. It's an ordinary rock. A jet black stone monument. It has existed in this underground space for who knows how many years. After Lan Shuiyu saw it, she also felt that she had survived from a desperate situation. After looking at it for a while, she said in despair, "It's just a stone tablet, and it's not a passage out. We still have to die here." Indeed, it is just a stone tablet. This stone tablet cannot let them leave here. For Wu Yu, anything that was different from rocks was his hope for survival. He cleaned up the dust on the stone tablet and found that there were carvings, words, and patterns on the stone tablet. They were so densely packed together that they turned out to be countless. Thousands of words. Lan Shuiyu came up to take a look and said in surprise, "This seems to be the writing of ancient times. It is slightly different from today's, but basically understandable. This kind of writing existed at least before the 1 UN, which was 120,000 years ago. In other words, that skeleton is of such an ancient figure." She looked shocked. "I understand, this may be an ancient monk's ruins," Lan Shuiyu said. "What are relics of ancient monks? You are so stupid. Our Dongsheng Shenzhou has existed for countless years. Over the long years, countless cultivators have existed. For example, this one may be here. This is the cave where he once practiced. Over the long years, the spiritual veins and spiritual energy will be changes. Maybe the aura of this place used to be very strong. He is a person before the 1 UN and should be an ancient ascetic." Lan Shuiyu said proudly. "There are indeed many caves in this endless world, but it is difficult for people to find them. It is said that even in the Bibo Mountains, there are many, such as the place in front of me. Feng Xiai probably doesn't even know about it." "What does this text say?" Lan Shuiyu was very curious. She leaned next to Wu Yu. The fragrance of her daughter's house came to her nostrils. After experiencing the temptation of the fox demon several times, when she looked at Lan Shuiyu now, her eyes would look a little, change. "There is only one Taoist companion, and I cannot be fooled by her." Wu Yu would look for someone who could truly work together on the path of cultivation, but he knew that Lan Shuiyu was not the one. "Go away, who said you can watch?" Wu Yu glared at her. Lan Shuiyu was immediately furious and said, "Wu Yu, you are going too far. So what, do you want to be beaten?" When Lan Shuiyu saw that he was serious, she was also frightened. The good impression she had just established on Wu Yu disappeared immediately. She said angrily, "If we can leave here, I will give you a good look. Now it's better, and the relationship is back to what it used to be." Wu Yu was too lazy to pay attention to her and began to be immersed in the words on the stone tablet. This is actually a Taoist technique. After taking a rough look at it, Wu Yu was a little surprised. Is it ancient Taoism? Lan Shuiyu peeked from behind and exclaimed. Wu Yu looked at her. She said, I remember that ancient Taoism does not seem to have strong level restrictions. Some very strong ancient Taoism can be practiced in the qi condensation realm. It is not like now, we can only practice ordinary Taoism, such as the Golden Pill Dao. This technique can only be practiced by my aunt's level. Wu Yu didn't know this. He studied it carefully. The newborn yin and yang sword. This is the name of this Taoism. It turns out to be a sword cultivation method. This was a pity. He had just left the way of swordsmanship, and he didn't expect that the same swordsmanship technique would appear here. Previously he obtained a spar similar to a fairy root, also in the shape of a sword. That skeleton should have been a sword cultivator during his lifetime. Wu Yu should not be very good at sword cultivation right now. Perhaps, after cultivating this technique, I can leave here. He was thinking that if his predecessors arranged for him to come in, he would not be trapped here to death. Wait, yin yang. He seems to have found the right fit. /U003CE /U003E /U003CE /U003F. Follow the official QQ account 17K, ID, Love 17K, read early, and keep abreast of the latest information. /U003C/E /U003E /U003C/E /U003E. Heaven Swallowing Record. Author, Fengqing Yang. Chapter 114. If you want to practice the nascent yin and yang and one qi sword, you need to have dual magic powers, one visible and one hidden, one hard and one soft, one yin and one yang. This is what is introduced in the general outline of Taoism. Very few people have the so-called double magic power, which depends on the qi condensation technique. The qi condensation technique, which can forge dual magic powers, is probably almost lost to this day. But it just so happened that Wu Yu's great heavenly immortal technique had this wonderful effect. The magic power of the great immortal magic is yin and yang, which are mutually reinforcing and have double magic power. As for the physical body, Wu Yu's indestructible Vajra body and inner Vajra Buddha are naturally extremely strong. When it comes to magical power, his yin and yang meet, and he understands it well, which is the great way. Because the magic power is suitable, although he no longer learns swordsmanship, he might be able to practice it successfully. Even if the power is not strong, as long as he can leave here, it will be successful. On the contrary, although Lan Shuiyu learned swordsmanship, she did not have dual magic power, so even if she was asked to watch, she would not be able to learn it. Lan Shuiyu's qi condensation technique is the well-known Tongtian Dao code. In the Tongtian sword section it is as powerful as a sword and is very domineering. I want to cultivate this nascent yin-yang one qi sword, Wu Yu said. You. Didn't you stop learning swords? Lan Shuiyu also read some, but she didn't believe Wu Yu could learn it. If I master this ancient Taoist technique, it will be possible to leave here. Do you think I should give it a try? Then I'll give it a try too. Lan Shuiyu was eager to give it a try. She didn't even know how to use dual magic. Wu Yu knew that it was impossible for her to learn it, so he ignored her. Lan Shuiyu's magical weapon was the pair of clear water swords. They were two magical weapons, so he borrowed one from her and began to think about the nascent yin and yang qi sword. Holding the magic weapon long sword, the sword is the king of weapons. The way of integrating many weapons is somewhat different from Wu Yu's direct and violent state of mind. The demon subduing stick is still the most suitable type of magic weapon for him. However, this does not mean that he is not as good as others in wielding the sword. He has been practicing swordplay since he was a child, and once he holds the sword, he is very good at it. When the heaven and earth are born, they are divided into yin and yang. It includes the formless, traceless, and invisible things. Those who are not born, and those who are born after birth, have not been handed over to the day after tomorrow, and are not aware of it. The emperor's principle is that there is no evil in the world. Although it has the nature of yin and yang and the five elements, it does not have the essence of yin and yang. It's all in one state, and it's not born yet. Innate and acquired, yin and yang intersect, the essence of the 2 and 5, wonderful combination and condensation, or the innate movement and the latter are formed, or the day after tomorrow is the movement and the innate is formed. The true is not separated from the false is not separated from the true depends on the false to complete, and the false depends on the true to exist. The whole chi, without damage, is complete and complete, just like the 5 elements in the picture, the yin and yang cohabitate, and the flow of chi is the symbol. To be honest, the formula was quite difficult to pronounce, very mysterious and difficult to understand. Wu Yu often spent time trying to understand the literal meaning. But it is undeniable that this nascent yin and yang one chi sword should have a good background. As an ancient Taoist art, it is somewhat different from today's Taoist art. But in terms of power, even if Wu Yu only has the 3rd level of magic power in the chi condensation realm, he should be able to it will surpass the 9 dragon column technique. The most important thing is that the technique of 9 dragon pan pillars is still regarded as an ordinary Taoist technique. Once Wu Yu condenses the golden elixir in the future and has the power of the golden elixir, and then uses the 9 dragon pan pillars, he will feel like a strong man using a wooden sword to kill people. It's time for Wu Yu to change to an iron sword. The mystery of this ancient Taoist technique is that it may be a wooden sword now, but in the future, as Wu Yu improves, it will become an iron sword. The reason why ancient Taoism is not graded is because it itself has no grade and it all depends on the practitioner. However, this kind of Taoism has basically been lost now. Of course, ancient Taoism also has its limits. The more Wu Yu pondered, the more he discovered that the mystery of this nascent yin and yang one chi sword has the principle of the movement of heaven and earth. When practicing, there is always a feeling of being in an endless void. Today's Taoist techniques are very powerful, but there are few that kind of understanding the mystery of the Great Road. He had a hunch that even if he succeeded in cultivating it, there would still be many skills that would be needed for sword cultivation in the future. Wu Yusheng divides yin and yang into magic, so he and Lan Shuiyu practiced at the same time. He has already experienced it, but Lan Shuiyu has never been able to get started. He only feels that his mind is full of mush and it is difficult to understand it at all. The yin and yang are one and the same, spanning the past and present. In this small room, Wu Yu began to practice. 10 days have passed, and Lan Shuiyu watched helplessly as Wu Yu gradually learned the ropes, but he still didn't know anything about it. I practice swordsmanship, why can't I do it before him? This was a big blow to Lan Shuiyu. After working hard for another 10 days, she saw Wu Yu completely immersed in it, so she simply stopped practicing and sat in the corner sulking. In fact, she was pinning all her hopes on Wu Yu. Hopefully, this is the way the skeleton left us to survive. Lan Shuiyu prayed. Since then, Wu Yu has hardly opened his eyes, let alone glanced at Lan Shuiyu. He was completely immersed in the world of ancient Taoism. Lan Shuiyu was very lonely. She wanted to talk to him several times, but she was afraid to disturb him and make all his efforts go to waste. The last hope, we must succeed. There was no day or night in this mountain. She waited and fell asleep. Without the replenishment of spiritual energy, her mana has been depleted, and she may not be able to survive. Wu Yu. In the blur, Wu Yu was still working hard. She began to feel shocked by this man's persistence. However, she saw the gap between herself and him even more. If I can live, this encounter will be the most wonderful in my life. Maybe it's not perfect, not that romantic, and he doesn't have any thoughts about me, but it can always make me change. This chapter is not over, please click on the next page to continue reading. Looking at his serious face, Lan Shuiyu couldn't help but smile. She felt that 2 words were happening to her, that is, Growth. 1 month, 2 months. 3 months passed quietly. Of course, neither of them knew how long had passed, maybe dozens of days, maybe a year. Lan Shuiyu leaned against the rock. Maybe she had more magic power than Wu Yu, but she was not as able to hold on as Wu Yu, so her consciousness was already a little blurry at this time. Wu Yu in front of him was also divided into several groups. Am I going to die? Lan Shuiyu couldn't help but think. Weak as never before. She felt that the world in her eyes was becoming more and more illusory. Wu Yu, who was standing there and looking at the sword, disappeared from her eyes at some point. Unexpectedly, I still died. Lan Shuiyu couldn't help but smile bitterly. His will became increasingly blurred and his body became weaker and weaker. The whole world is moving away. Suddenly, there was a bang, and the whole world was shaking. Farewell, she felt that this might be a signal of death. Suddenly, she seemed to be lifted up. Are you dead? Someone asked her. It seems that he is dead, Lan Shuiyu replied with a gossamer voice. Okay, then I'll carry you out and bury you. Tread. Further back, there was only the sound of footsteps echoing in my ears. Although it was noon, the entire Bibo Mountains were a little desolate. The cranes and sky cloud pengs that used to fly around are now much less numerous. The handyman disciples all stayed quietly, raising cranes and planting fairy spirits. Although the spiritual energy is majestic, the Blue Mountains seem to be shrouded in haze, and the faces of many disciples are gloomy, ugly, and even panicked. 3 months ago, a major incident occurred in Xuanhuan Valley, which shocked the entire Tongtian sword sect, and countless people rushed to tell each other. A 900-year-old demon actually sneaked into the immortal Fate Valley and killed more than a dozen core disciples of the Qi condensation realm, including Wu Yu, Lan Shuiyu, and others. That group of people is the future mainstay of the Tongtian sword sect. That ghost-faced ape almost broke the foundation of Tongtian sword sect. He did what no demon would dare to do. Although the ghost-faced ape was killed by the master on the spot, and even though all the demons in the demon suppression tower were beheaded within 1 day to worship the dead disciples, the storm did not end. First, the disciples were filled with righteous indignation and wanted to go out to kill the demons. However, they were all intercepted and returned by the headmaster, and the Tongtian sword sect recalled almost all its outer disciples. Then, news spread. The tragedy of Immortal Valley is just the beginning. It is said that the opponent of the Tongtian sword sect, the famous sect Xuanhuan Daozong, actually colluded with the ghost cultivators from the East China Sea, the 7 ghosts of the Red Sea, with the intention of carving up the Tongtian sword sect's mountain sect and resources. What's even more frightening is that a 1,000-year-old demon with a demon elixir has led many demons to join this alliance. The 3 parties may be ready to engulf the Tongtian sword sect at any time. What was wrong was that the Tongtian sword sect had this aura that exceeded all their protection. No one confirmed this news, but it made a big fuss, but the entire Tongtian sword sect was panicked, and some of the handyman disciples fled. Although there was no war, people's hearts were already in chaos. The Tongtian sword sect, which was originally prosperous, now looks a bit desolate. However, there was a slight change today. It is said that today, the leader of the Xuanhuan Dao sect, Zhang Xie, personally came to clarify to Feng Shui that the Xuanhuan Dao sect definitely did not collude with ghost cultivators or demons. The news spread during this period were all rumors spread by ghost cultivators and demons. Fortunately, it's a lie. Otherwise, if the 3 parties came to fight, our Tongtian sword sect would be dead. In the Bibo Mountains, many disciples were discussing. Yes, fortunately Xuanhuan Daozong is still on our side. We are all righteous people. It would be shameless to collude with ghost cultivators and demons. It is said that sect leader Zhang, leading a group of young and powerful men from the Xuanhuan Dao sect, is communicating with the disciples of our Tongtian sword sect at Tuxian platform. Why don't you go and take a look? Then sect leader Jiang's son, Zhang Junlin, is also here. /U003CE /U003E /U003CE /U003F. Follow the official QQ public account 17K, ID, Love 17K, read early, and keep abreast of the latest information /U003C/E /U003E /U003C/E /U003E. Heaven Swallowing Record. Author, Feng-Qing Yang. Chapter 115. Doziantai. At noon, the scorching sun was in the sky, the scorching sunshine burned the grass and trees to yellow, and the cicadas were chirping loudly everywhere, which made people feel restless. The immortal fighting platform is like a giant sword thrust into the sky. It takes some ability to stand on such a tilted place. Under the sunshine, two groups of people can be vaguely seen on the Duxian platform. One group is at the top, and the number is slightly smaller. There are about 20 people, old and young. They are all wearing black and white Taoist robes with bagua patterns on the back. Her long hair is fluttering, giving her a feeling of being out of the dust. On the other hand, there was another group of people, numbering in the hundreds. Most of them were wearing tough sword robes embroidered with long swords. Compared with the people in black and white robes, they were slightly more tough. Of course, the more than 20 people opposite them were even more aggressive. Show the spirit of immortality. The person in the black and white robe is a cultivator from the Xuanhuan Dao section. There are elders and core disciples, and the rest are disciples of the Tongtian sword sect. There were 3 big shots present. On the side of the Tongtian sword sect, Feng Xia and Lan Huayun are both there. They are sitting on seats, one on the left and one on the right, one gold and one blue. One of them has a cold expression, and the other has an icy expression, but they have a kind of immortality. The feeling of a couple. Of course, everyone who is familiar with them knows that before the great change in spiritual energy, the two of them were still bitter enemies, competing with each other and suppressing each other. Nowadays, it seems that these two supreme beings have been communicating more. The third big figure, who is also a very important figure within a radius of 10,000 miles, is the leader of the Xuanhuan Dao sect, named Zhang Xie, who is as powerful as Feng Xia. He was a middle-aged man with long hair and flying black hair. He was very noble and majestic. He was very orthodox and had an air of an immortal between his smiles. He is wearing a simple black and white robe, clean and neat, and his eyes are as dark as the quiet night. To be honest, just comparing this face, Zhang Xie will be a kind and respectable elder, while Feng Shui is much more difficult to approach. For example, Zhang Xie was facing them with a smile, while Feng Shui had a cold face, and seemed to want to issue an eviction order. In fact, between the two groups of people, 2 people were fighting. At this moment, one of them was suppressed and fell to the ground. He got up with difficulty. He was obviously defeated. The winner raised his hand, and there was a pagoda as tall as one person in the sky. It was emitting brilliant light and shining with golden light. Now it was shrinking and was controlled by him. When it returned to the man's hand, it was only half a foot tall. The man was dressed in gorgeous clothes and looked extremely noble, and his face was majestic. When he grinned, there was an evil intention. This feeling made many female disciples' eyes shine. Accepted. Although he said this, he did not show any humility at all. Instead, he sneered and said to everyone, "It seems that there is really no one below the 5th level of the qi condensation realm of the Tongtian sword sect who is capable. He is Zhang Junlin. It's been almost half a year since we said goodbye to Wudu." Compared with that day, Zhang Junlin's personality has not changed, but his aura has changed drastically. His golden eyes, sharp sight, and sharpness all over his body make people shy away. At this time, Zhang Junlin had a domineering aura that even Zhang Xie didn't have. Ignoring the displeasure on the faces of the disciples of the Tongtian sword sect, Zhang Junlin played with the pagoda in his hands and said with a smile, I remember that your Tongtian sword sect also has a guy named Wu Yu. I once had some disputes with him in Wudu. It is said that he has recently been. You are making rapid progress, why don't you come forward to challenge me? To be honest, I am standing here just for him. He had been watching for a long time, but Wu Yu was not present. Zhang Xie's purpose of coming to Tongtian sword sect this time has been achieved. If he hadn't requested it, the two parties would not have appeared here in Tuxian Terrace. He defeated almost all the people at the 5th level of the Qi condensation realm, and they were all people with immortal roots, but he didn't see the person he wanted to defeat the most. After returning to Xuanhuan Daozong, all his efforts were for revenge. Wu Yu. Speaking of this name, the disciples of the Tongtian sword sect were a little touched, and their faces turned gloomy. Lan Huayun said, Sect Master Zhang Junlin's immortal roots are indeed unique and have opened our eyes, but it's getting late. Zhang Xie smiled slightly, stood up from his seat, and said, Indeed, we should go. I hope you will think more about everything I have clarified with you two today, and don't let ghost cultivators and demons deceive you. No problem. Sect Master Zhang came to visit in person. That's sincerity. How can we doubt it? Lan Huayun said. No, I can't leave without seeing that Wu Yu. At this moment, Zhang Junlin looked coldly as he scanned the Tongtian sword sect, trying to pick out someone among them. After glancing around, he suddenly saw that the Feng Xia's eyes had changed slightly and looked very scary. Zhang Junlin was startled and suddenly had an idea in his mind. He couldn't help but said loudly, It is said that 3 months ago, there were more than a dozen members of the noble section. A disciple died in Immortal Fate Valley. Could it be that Wu Yu was among them? Everyone looked at the headmaster in unison. From this reaction, Zhang Junlin understood. He couldn't help but laugh and said, I didn't expect that I would die like this. I also wanted him to see how far I, Zhang Junlin, surpassed him. You're right. At this moment, a woman in white clothes suddenly stood up next to the wind and snow cliff. Her face was as cold as ice, and there was a hint of sullenness in her eyes. It is said that you were in Wu. They were all defeated by Wu Yu, so the real purpose today is to win the battle, right? Although Wu Yu is not here, I can fight with you. It was Su Yanli. This chapter is not over yet, please click the next page to continue reading. In fact, Zhang Junlin almost challenged all the 5th level disciples of the condensation realm, claiming that he was invincible in this realm. The disciples of Tongtian sword sect had long been dissatisfied, and now they also expected Su Yanli to control him. However, Su Yanli was probably in a low mood because of Wu Yu's death, and she had no interest in fighting, so everyone could not force her. But Zhang Junlin mentioned Wu Yu, which angered her. Su Yanli, I've been waiting for you for a long time, and I thought you didn't dare to come. Zhang Junlin looked at her with burning eyes. Since Wu Yu is not here, defeating his senior sister is also a relief. It has developed like this. Zhang Xie apologized and smiled, saying, well, the children are just aggressive, but we were like this when we were young, so let them play again. Both of them are the pride of heaven, maybe, they can get to know each other through fighting and become a marriage. The disciples of Xuanhuan Dao sect all laughed. Dad, how can you be so vulgar and offend a beautiful woman? Zhang Junlin smiled and turned back, looking nonchalant, and then said to Su Yanli, however, senior sister Su is indeed a peerless beauty. In this world, only I, Zhang Junlin, can match her. People who are familiar with Zhang Junlin know that he actually accepts everyone, regardless of gender. Dare to speak like this in front of Feng Shui. The purpose of Xuanhuan Daozong's visit this time may not be so simple. Su Yanli was extremely angry, but more worried. Looking back, fortunately Feng Shui did not directly attack, and fought with Zhang Xie here. I need to defeat this Zhang Junlin to save the face of my Tongtian sword section. He knew that he had a heavy responsibility. I heard that you like male love, so don't joke with me. There is no possibility between you and me. Taking advantage of a woman with your mouth is not what a real man does. You should shut up. Su Yanli hit back with a word, which made Zhang Junlin's face gloomy and embarrassed. He said in public that he liked homosexuality, which made the disciples of Tongtian sword sect laugh. Ding! Su Yanli's magic weapon, Li Ri Jin Lu, vibrated in his hand. Humph! Zhang Junlin said no more. The magic weapon in his hand, the Baoguang Tower, rotated and ascended to the sky. Under his control, it expanded again. It was more than one person tall, hovering above the battle between the two. The Baoguang Tower was not a simple magic weapon. It was better than Zhang Junlin's previous gilded ruler. It was one of the treasures that Zhang Xie had recently given him. It is said that your immortal root is the golden jade sword heart. Zhang Junlin's eyes flashed with a golden light, and then he smiled and said, of course it is true, and it has the same properties as my heart of the giant sun, but the effect is very different. The heart of the giant sun is Zhang Junlin's peerless immortal root. Buzz. In front of everyone, Zhang Junlin used the heart of the sun again. There was a golden sun in his Qi Hai appointment. Now the sun spread out and gathered all over his body. From everyone's perspective, they could clearly see that he was covered with a layer of golden armor, like a transparent armor like steel, all over his body, even covering his eyes, which was absolutely infallible. He was like an insect creature, with invulnerable armor. The armor grew with his flesh and blood, and became a part of his body. This was a bit similar to Wu Yu's immortal ape transformation. This heart of the sun allows me to have the giant sun powerful golden body, with an impenetrable defense and indestructible physical strength. It is the best of the immortal roots. This is Zhang Junlin's greatest pride now. It's just a turtle shell. Su Yanli's cold words made Zhang Junlin almost vomit blood. He found that he wanted to conquer this woman. Then let's see the real deal. The two 5th level condensation Qi realm with immortal roots fought immediately. Su Yanli had just watched the battle for a long time and had a good understanding of Zhang Junlin. He had practiced a new Taoist art called Sun Dao Cannon, which was used in conjunction with the Baoguang Tower. The style was indeed very different from that of the Tongtian sword school. Destroying the giant sun. Zhang Junlin roared, his hands rolled, and the seal rolled. The vast magic power condensed in his chest, giving birth to a flame, and then the fire surface surged at a speed visible to the naked eye, instantly turning into a huge fireball with a diameter of more than 6 feet. The fireball was like the scorching sun, with a torrent of flames rolling inside. This infinite fire could destroy a mountain. Go! With a palm push, the huge fireball rolled in, and wherever it went, the ground was pulled out with a deep charred black. Everyone was in an uproar. Facing such a huge attack, Su Yanli's face did not change. The long sword in her hand was like a flower. She moved skillfully and her Taoist art was flying. Tai Kuijin sword. However, she found that the Baoguang Tower was suppressing her, affecting her speed and efficiency, just like a mountain suppressing her head. /U003CE /U003E /U003CE /U003F. Follow the official QQ public account 17K, ID, Love 17K, to read the latest news at any time. /U003C/E /U003E /U003C/E /U003E. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Heaven Swallowing Record. Author, Fengqing Yang. Chapter 116. There are multiple types of magic weapons, and they can generally be divided into weapon types and other types. Swords and sticks are both weapons, while the Baoguang Tower is something else. If it is a weapon, it generally has the effect of expanding and adding attacks, while other types of magic weapons have various functions. For example, there is a suppression array in the Baoguang Tower. When the suppression array operates, it can suppress the opponent. Its effectiveness. That suppression array is very rare, so the Baoguang Tower is also very rare. During the battle, there is always a big mountain suppressing the head, which is also quite troublesome and will definitely have a huge impact. Now, while everyone was exclaiming, Su Yanli was greatly affected, and even the Taikoujin sword could not be used normally. If Su Yanli were defeated, the Tongtian sword sect would really be disgraced. Whoosh! At the moment when everyone was shocked, Su Yanli took out a piece of balian from the bag of me. The balian was pure white and flawless, like white clouds, flying up and entangled on the Baoguang Tower in the blink of an eye. That is also a magic weapon. Lead. Bai Lian pulled out the Baoguang Tower and tore it apart. The power suppressing Su Yanli disappeared, but at this time, the giant son of destruction was already very close to her. The fire had almost burned her brows, and she was about to be swallowed into the sea of fire. Tear. At the critical moment, the golden sword light soared into the sky, piercing the huge flame ball, piercing it, and blasting it to pieces. Su Yanli stepped back more than 10 steps, her movements were graceful, and she avoided the explosion of flames like a crane. The location was scorched black within a few feet, and the fire is still raging to this day. Zhang Junlin didn't expect Su Yanli to be unscathed. Obviously, Su Yanli was not as easy to deal with as he thought. Now, the disciples on both sides are full of enthusiasm and blood. There are many people on the Tongtian sword sect side, and they are all shouting for Su Yanli. Their blazing eyes are as if they are crazy. This kind of momentum is also suppressing Zhang invisibly. King's arrival. Whoosh! Su Yanli lived up to everyone's expectations. His movements were swift and fierce, turning into a puff of smoke and approaching Zhang Junlin in an instant. The sword cultivators of the Tongtian sword sect are even better at close combat. In an instant, Su Yanli appeared in front of Zhang Junlin, the golden sword in his hand bursting with light. Morning Light 300 Swords. This is the culmination of Feng Xia Sword's Taoist skills. 300 swords are condensed in the hand. When these Taoist skills are used, the sword energy soars to the sky. The golden jade sword heart takes effect at this moment, and the sharp sword energy penetrates through the Lirijin Liu. Through it all, Zhang Junlin was completely shrouded in the shadow of the golden sword for a moment, and the sword was overwhelming, like a violent storm. Su Yanli's entire body was like a sword. The golden and jade sword heart made her and the sword become one. In the sword energy, there is the edge of the golden jade sword heart, and there is also a tearing and destructive power, impacting Zhang Junlin's body. This is the power of the immortal root, which greatly increases Su Yanli's attacks. At the same time, at the 5th level of the Qi condensation realm, whether one has immortal roots and what kind of immortal roots one has, the difference is so huge that it even transcends a realm. For example, Ni Hong II is far inferior to Su Yanli. Swish, brush, brush. The disciples could only see the sword light soaring into the sky, and the two people fighting were covered. Senior Sister Su, we must win. This Zhang Junlin is too arrogant, I must kill him till he pee. The mood of the disciples of Tongtian sword sect was getting more and more nervous. Roll. At this time, Zhang Junlin shouted loudly from the sword force, and the flames suddenly drowned the shadow of the sword. There was a faint sound of metal collision, and Zhang Junlin, who had the golden body of the great sun, could be seen. Junlin was simply a monster. The body that already had armor actually gave birth to endless flames, engulfing Su Yanli directly into the scope of the body. Boom boom boom. What followed was a fierce battle that was difficult to see clearly. Zhang Junlin is very scary. He is good at Taoist attacks and not good at close combat, but with this golden body of the great sun, he is good at close combat. In this battle, for the strong men, they actually did not think highly of Su Yanli. The battle lasted for a while, and finally Su Yanli withdrew from the fighting area. She had no injuries on her body, but she was obviously a little tired. After all, high-intensity fighting consumes a lot of mana, but Zhang Junlin is different. He has the huge power of the sun golden body, now he is unscathed, his physical body is full of vitality and blood, like a giant beast, his eyes are full of aggression, he looks at Su Yanli with contempt, and laughs, "It's so pitiful, I'm afraid you have to use all your methods to clean up. You didn't even hurt me at all. Su Yanli, I believe you understand that if you continue to fight, you will definitely die, but I won't be hurt at all, do you need to continue?" He told the truth. If the war continues for a long time, Su Yanli will definitely suffer. Although it is said that Zhang Junlin has been hiding in a turtle shell, this is also his ability. Su Yanli knew it well. "Forget it, don't show off and hurt yourself," she was about to continue, but Feng Shui's voice came to her ears. "Master, he is too arrogant, Su Yanli was unwilling to give in. Of course, she also knew that Feng Shui cared about her, otherwise with his temper, there would be no such thing as admitting defeat. This man is arrogant and complacent. He just relies on getting good immortal roots to overpower you. In 2 or 3 years, you will be far behind him." Feng Shui despised Zhang Junlin to his core. "Having said that, I'm really not reconciled to not being able to defeat him today." Su Yanli saw that Zhang Junlin was laughing arrogantly. He really hated him no matter how he looked at him. Sure enough, when Zhang Junlin saw that she didn't take any more action, he laughed loudly and said, "In that case, I have won. Even you, Su Yanli, is no longer my opponent." Sure enough, this Tongtian sword sect doesn't have a single genius. If at my age and at my current level, I am the first genius. In fact, although Zhang Junlin was proud, he was not so arrogant. Seeing that Zhang Xie was also smiling, it was obvious that this was his instigation. "He is destroying our morale. Is there nothing we can do?" Lan Huayun asked in a low voice. "It's a useless move, let's see the truth behind it. Over 100 years, Zhang Xie has not changed. He is keen on these heretics and seeing off guests for me." Feng Shui stood up and glanced at Su Yanli. Su Yanli then understood and came to Feng Xie with Mo Shishu, preparing to leave with him. Today, the so-called clarification is false. The real purpose of Zhang Xie is, firstly, to verify the aura of my Tongtian sword sect, secondly, to make us relax our vigilance, thirdly, to use this Zhang Junlin to attack our disciples' morale. However, when sects fight, it depends on the methods of the top ones. Feng Shui talked to the 2 disciples and left together. "Master, I am not willing to be bullied like this," Mo Shishu said through gritted teeth. "Then what can you do? You are at the 6th level of Qi condensation realm. Even if you defeat him, these hypocrites can still embarrass you with their mouth," Su Yanli said displeased. She also just learned the lesson. Not only were they unwilling, but when Mo Shishu laughed, the disciples of Tongtian sword sect all had their eyes turned red and gnashed their teeth. They were so humiliated, but even Su Yanli couldn't deal with him. For Fang Gang and the others, they were really offended. Xuanhuan Daozong. Zhang Junlin. The young people gnashed their teeth and were filled with righteous indignation, but they were helpless. They had gone up several times before, but were all defeated by Zhang Junlin. At this time, Zhang Xie stood up again, ready to say goodbye. The cheerful smile on his face could be seen by anyone with a discerning eye. He was in a good mood now, as if he had stepped on Feng Xie's face. "I won't send it off." Feng Shui looked indifferently and watched them leave. "It's over." Obviously, what the other party said was a clarification, but in fact it was a different kind of declaration of war. Zhang Xie came to the Tongtian sword sect's territory and inspected it. He was obviously very satisfied with the Bibo Mountains with the current level of aura. Compared with the current mountain gate of Xuanhuan Daozong, this place is much better. In fact, the Xuanhuan Dao sect is not as good as the Tongtian Sword sect. But this time, the right place, the right people, and someone to help us will step on their heads. Look at Zhang Junlin, his wild laughter, unscrupulous, as if these blue mountains are already their territory. Boom. At this moment, there was a commotion below the Duxian platform, like hot water boiling and a pot exploding. The crowd was noisy and blocked the way Zhang Xia and the others left. Wow! In the crowd, many people were making loud noises, and they seemed to be calling two people's names vaguely. In fact, most people didn't see clearly what was going on. There were people blocking the way. But everyone was curious, so it became more and more noisy. Everyone, make a way for them to get up. Give way. For a moment, the entire Duxian terrace seemed to be boiling. Someone shouted loudly and finally gave way to a path, and there was a vague sight of someone rushing towards the top of the mountain. Hearing this huge movement, Feng Shui, Su Yanli, and the others also looked this way. Quiet. Feng Shui threatened, and the noise in the crowd ended. Although everyone was excited, they still held back. On the Duxian platform, even Lan Huayun stood up and looked down in confusion. Suddenly, Feng Shui's eyes narrowed and his body shook slightly. Ah, Su Yanli stared down, and when he saw that familiar figure, there were tears in his eyes. Wu Yu, Mo Shishu couldn't believe his eyes. He rubbed them several times and found that he was right, it was him. Suijitsu. Lan Huayun, Zhao Changtian, and Yi Qingfeng exclaimed in unison, they also saw it? That's right, Wu Yu carried Lan Shuiyu up to the Duxian platform. After completing the nascent yin-yang qi sword, the skeletal senior did not disappoint them. A passage to leave appeared in the small room. Wu Yu dug about 10 feet underground and found the passage, which led to Bibo. Among the peaks of the mountains, not far from Duxian Terrace. As soon as we came out, we saw such a grand occasion. Lan Shuiyu's mana was exhausted and he was very tired. Wu Yu, because of his majestic flesh and blood, was still very active, especially breathing this vast spiritual energy, which basically did not cause any loss. He rushed up to the immortal fighting platform in a few steps, and casually took Lan Shuiyu. Yu threw it to Lan Huayun, then stepped forward, knelt in front of Feng Xia, looked solemnly, and said, Master, the disciple is not dead and is back. He had just understood below that everyone in the Tongtian sword sect considered him dead. /U003CE /U003E /U003CE /U003F. Follow the official QQ account 17K, ID, Love 17K, read early, and keep abreast of the latest information /U003C/E /U003E /U003C/E /U003E. Heaven Swallowing Record. Author, Fengqing Yang. Chapter 117. It'll be good to come back. Feng Shui's mood didn't fluctuate much, but he had always been like this, so he probably didn't know how happy he was in his heart. On the other side, Lan Huayun was holding Lan Shuiyu with tears streaming down her face. In stark contrast to this side, Lan Shuiyu also woke up. At this time, she escaped and hugged her aunt, directly cried loudly. Feng Shui nodded and motioned for Wu Yu to stand up. Junior brother next to him were Su Yanli and Mo Shishu. Seeing that their eyes were red, Wu Yu knew that during this period, these two brothers and sisters had been feeling uncomfortable for his death. Especially Su Yanli, whose emotions seldom fluctuated, but now her eyes filled with tears for Wu Yu's return. Just stay alive, she smiled and wiped away her tears. She was a little embarrassed to shed tears in front of Wu Yu. That's right, my good junior brother. I heard that you were killed by a demon. Senior brother, I have been feeling uncomfortable for a few days. Although there are so many beauties around me every day, I still can't be happy. 10,000 beauties are not as good as you. Mo Shishu hugged him so hard that it made Wu Yu wonder if this person was just like Zhang Junlin. Apparently, he is not. After being teased by Mo Shishu, the atmosphere suddenly became cheerful, not as good as Lan Shuiyu's life or death farewell. Wu Yu calmed down and said to Feng Shuiya, "Master, it's like this. The ghost-faced ape killed everyone, and Lan Shuiyu and I were left in the end. We used a little trick to deceive the ghost-faced ape and find an opportunity. After lighting up the red flame soaring talisman, I still couldn't escape the fate of death. However, by chance, I touched something in the cave and fell into an ancient monk's ruins, which contained an ancient Taoism. I can leave there and come back only after I succeed in cultivation." He briefly told what happened and let them know the cause and effect. "I see. No wonder I came back after 3 months." Feng Shuiya nodded. "Life is the most important thing. As for the ancient monks' relics and ancient Taoist techniques, they are not too special. He also had such an opportunity when he was young. He could just sort it out for Wu Yu later. Auntie, it was Wu Yu who saved my life." On the other side, Lan Shuiyu's face was full of pear blossoms. She looked over. There was no hatred in her eyes, only gentleness. Because of Sidu Minglang's death, Lan Huayun originally had murderous intentions for Wu Yu. Now when she heard Lan Shuiyu's words, she was startled. Although she didn't express anything, the change in her expression probably meant to write it off. She was a golden elixir cultivator, so Wu Yu would not go against her. Their return made the entire Tongtian sword sect fall into joy. After all, they were also the future hope of the sword sect. On the other side, Xuanhuan Daozong was excited and laughing just now, but now he can only keep his mouth shut. Especially Zhang Junlin, his expression is quite wonderful. "Master, why are they here?" Wu Yu only saw Zhang Junlin at this time. Behind Zhang Junlin, there was a big shot. He knew who it was with just a little guess. It must be Zhang Xie. Feng Shuiya didn't answer, but Mo Shishu sneered and said, "You came here to step in and humiliated us. Check out the spot." Wu Yu understood. How to humiliate? With a group of them, there is no way they can humiliate the Tongtian sword sect at this time, right? Su Yanli said, "Zhang Junlin obtained a kind of immortal root called the Heart of the Giant Sun and possessed the golden body of the Giant Sun, which made up for the shortcomings of their Xuanhuan Dao sect's melee combat, and he also had the 5th level Qi condensation realm. He has a lot of magic power and is almost invincible at the same level, so I can't defeat him." It turns out that this was just Zhang Junlin's provocation. Sure enough, after reaching the 5th level of Qi condensation realm, "Have you planted immortal roots?" Wu Yu's gaze happened to collide with that of Zhang Junlin, and in an instant, an extremely intense fire broke out. It was as if everyone had disappeared, leaving only these two fire-like existences. "Senior sister, you haven't defeated him yet." In Wu Yu's heart, Su Yanli was a target. And Zhang Junlin is a defeated general. Generally speaking, Wu Yu doesn't think highly of his defeated generals. He has this kind of pride. Generally speaking, people who are defeated by him once will find it difficult to overtake him. He has a turtle shell and lacks endurance, so he cannot attack for a long time. Mo Shishu described it vividly. When Zhang Junlin saw Wu Yu, he never moved his eyes away. I'm afraid the scene of being defeated by Wu Yu in Wudu is still vivid in his mind. Just when everyone gradually turned their attention to their collision, Wu Yu suddenly said loudly, "I heard that there was a man who was beaten by me in Wudu and ran away with his buttocks between his legs. Now he is wearing a turtle shell and comes to provoke me again. Me. Now that I, Wu Yu, have appeared, can the one wearing the turtle shell come out?" What he said was full of explosive power that made people extremely angry. Not to mention Zhang Junlin, the other members of the Xuanhuan Dao sect were all furious when they heard this. Being defeated by Wu Yu was a bloody scar for Zhang Junlin. He had just recovered a little, but now he was torn apart by Wu Yu, and revenge was planted in everyone's eyes. Wow! As soon as Wu Yu came back, he said such words, and the Duxian terror suddenly became quiet and the blood was boiling again. People were making noises and booing. Instead of calling Wu Yu's name, they specifically called out the 3 words turtle shell. Then Zhang Junlin's the arrogance was suppressed in an instant. As the saying goes, this is what young people are passionate about. Who can gather here and not be young and frivolous? Who is willing to be suppressed and humiliated? Wu Yu was simple and rude, no ambiguity when it came to provocation, and immediately aroused the disciples' enthusiasm. On the immortal fighting platform, they cheered crazily for him. Wu Yu was directly pushed out, and faced Zhang in front of everyone's attention. Junlin walked step by step, and his eyes were already filled with fiery light. Him. Wu Yu, cripple him and blow up the turtle's shell. Let him wash Duxiande with blood. Young beings all have fire-like blood in their chests. Once he wakes up, he is furious. The humiliation just now was still vivid in his mind. From these countless roars, we can see how arrogant and proud Zhang Junlin was just now. Disciples from 2 factions have been competing for generations. Wu Yu stared at Zhang Junlin with burning eyes, and immediately smiled, saying, Zhang Junlin. As soon as Wu Du said goodbye, you turned into a turtle. Why did you come to my Tongtian sword sect to show off your power? It is said that you are the one who wants to challenge me, then stop talking nonsense. Lan Huayun's face twitched. This time she really saw the difference between Wu Yu and other disciples. He was really bold, but this time, what he said made her feel secretly happy. Wu Yu, pay attention to your words. The disciples of Xuanhuan Dao sect are all our righteous compatriots, she had to remind him. Yes, apologist. Wu Yu took off the demon-subduing stick and hit one end of it on the ground. The overbearing force immediately shook the ground. Wu Yu, Zhang Junlin had already gritted his teeth, and now he was even more overwhelmed with anger. He couldn't wait to regain his dignity. Wait! Suddenly, Wu Yu waved his hand, making Zhang Junlin stop in shock and said, Don't you dare. Who says I don't dare? Your defeated general wants to provoke me. Why should I agree to this boring battle? Unless there is some luck. He's been a little tight lately, so he thought of this. What kind of prize do you want? Zhang Junlin's eyes were serious. At this time, Wu Yu had changed a lot from when he was in Wudu. He was more domineering and strong. This made him have more murderous intentions in his heart because he was afraid of being attacked by Wu Yu again. Defeat. There are so many elders here today, so I won't bet so much. 30 qi condensing pills. Do you have any seeds? Wu Yu said that he didn't want to bet too much, so he said 30, which made Zhang Junlin frown. One time. 30 qi condensing pills, this is a big gamble. The elders of the Tongtian sword sect couldn't help but feel a little worried. They probably knew that Wu Yu had reached the 3rd level of qi condensation realm, but he faced an opponent that even Su Yanli could not defeat. The disciples, on the other hand, were even more fanatical. They rushed forward with enthusiasm regardless of the consequences, shouting, If you don't dare to bet, you are the grandson. Gai son, I don't dare to gamble. How could Zhang Junlin stand such excitement? If he didn't dare to bet, he would be laughed at even if he defeated Wu Yu. He gritted his teeth and said, Of course I dare to bet. I have 30 pieces of qi condensation in my bag, Dan. The question is, do you, Wu Yu? Of course Wu Yu didn't. He smiled faintly, turned around, and said, Brothers, I am borrowing 30 qi condensing pills from you today. If I lose, they will be returned to me one day. Who is willing to lend them to me? Such a passionate matter is related to the honor of the sect, how can anyone not borrow it? I'll lend you 2. I'll lend you 3. I'll give you one, you don't have to pay it back. Senior brother will support you with 10 coins. Mo Shishu smiled. After a while, they had collected more than 50. Wu Yu turned back to Zhang Junlin and said, "A man, if I lose, I won't owe you anything. Okay, today I will give your defeated general a chance. Come on." Zhang Junlin finally waited for this moment. Only by defeating Wu Yu can he save this face. Otherwise, he will be the laughing stock of both factions, and he will be even more shameless in the future. Baoguang Tower. With a move of his left hand, the Baoguang Tower appeared in his hand and shone brightly, becoming larger. The great sun's golden body with great strength. The divine body changes and the golden light shines. Sure enough, this immortal root is powerful. Wu Yu could see clearly, no wonder Su Yanli couldn't defeat him. Now, Zhang Junlin is really capable. Shrouded in golden light, he looked like an Iron Man. Wu Yu didn't care. Immortal ape transformation. He was taller and taller than Zhang Junlin, occupying a commanding position. With golden hair, rough eyes, and sharp teeth, he looks like an animal. Bite. The demon subduing stick was pulled up from the ground. Boom. He made giant footprints one step at a time, shaking the ground apart, and the demon subduing stick rose up with overwhelming momentum. /U003CE /U003E /U003CE /U003F. Follow the official QQ account 17K, ID, Love 17K, read early, and keep abreast of the latest information. /U003C/E /U003E /U003C/E /U003E. Heaven Swallowing Record. Author, Fengqing Yang. Chapter 118. Chapter 117. Battle of Glory. Just now, the disciples of Tongtian sword sect were suppressed too harshly by Zhang Junlin, so they exploded at this moment, forming a huge wave. At this time, Wu Yu is their weapon. He is the peak of the huge wave. Wu Yu and Zhang Junlin both have the attributes of gold and fire. Now they are facing each other head-on, like two iron balls burning with golden flames, colliding with each other. The collision caused the Duxiantai to tremble. Kill. Hundreds of Tongtian disciples roared with great momentum, like a raging sea, all of which were the pressure on Zhang Junlin. Wu Yu now seemed to have merged with all the Tongtian disciples. He knew his mission. Now, he represented not only himself, but also the glory and dignity of Tongtian sword sect, and the dignity of his savior, his master Feng Xia. This was not a battle of one person, but a battle of dignity. At this moment, Wu Yu found that he had never been so passionate. This was a feeling of honor. Maybe he had been in Tongtian sword sect for a short time, but the good fortune given to him here allowed him to be reborn. That kindness was unforgettable for a lifetime. At this time, the honor of Tongtian sword sect was extremely important to him. And this time, even more than last time, he was eager to defeat Zhang Junlin. Wu Yu, 30 Qi condensation pills are enough for you to repay for 10 years, the Baoguang Tower in Zhang Junlin's hand flew, spinning in the sky, suppressing Wu Yu's head. Boom! The Baoguang Tower burst into 1,000-foot brilliance. For Wu Yu, it was like a huge mountain pressing on his head. Being suppressed by a huge force all the time naturally had a huge impact on his Taoist magic. His hands and feet, and his twisting body were all like being stuck in a quagmire. Die. Zhang Junlin almost repeated the same trick he used to deal with Su Yanli to deal with Wu Yu. When the Baoguang Tower suppressed him, he used the Taoist magic Sun Dao Cannon to condense a huge sun of destruction. Another 6-foot fireball like the scorching sun was born in front of Zhang Junlin, and it smashed towards Wu Yu like a cannonball. Another round of destruction. At this time, Wu Yu was facing the same dilemma as Su Yanli before. Su Yanli had another magic weapon to deal with the Baoguang Tower, but Wu Yu did not, so everyone had no idea how Wu Yu would perform. Of course, they were very nervous. Don't lose. If you lose, our Tongtian sword sect will lose face. Every disciple had a firelight on his face. Boom. Wu Yu moved. His movements were incredible. Amid the exclamations of the crowd, he did not use the powerful Sun Dao cannon, but instead jumped up, rushed into the sky, held the demon-suppressing stick with both hands, and smashed it violently. 4 dragons coiled around the pillar. In the anger of the demon-suppressing stick, 4 dragons rolled up and coiled around the demon-suppressing stick, rotating with anger and great momentum. Bang! In an instant, the demon-suppressing stick hit the Baoguang Tower. Buzz! The Baoguang Tower made a roar, and under the double blow of Wu Yu's physical strength and magic power, it was actually pulled out and rolled directly off the Duxiantai. Under such a huge force, even if Zhang Junlin wanted to use the object control technique to absorb it back, it would not be so easy. After all, this was a life and death battle, and he couldn't leave. At this time, Zhang Junlin was laughing, and the disciples of Tongtian sword sect all looked ugly. Because, although Wu Yu pulled away the Baoguang Tower, the Taoist magic of the Sun Dao cannon bombarded Wu Yu and directly engulfed him. Wu Yu's figure disappeared directly from everyone's sight. If it were someone else, the raging fire would have been reduced to ashes by now. Master Su Yanli and his disciples were all anxious. Wu Yu, he won't die. Just as Zhang Junlin sneered triumphantly and everyone's faces were ugly, a figure suddenly flashed in the huge fireball, rushed out suddenly, and smashed towards the ground like a meteorite. Boom! That monstrous force was Wu Yu. As the saying goes, even Taoist magic will have different effects when facing different opponents. The fire tornado of Haoshan Shangxian once restrained Wu Yu, and Zhang Junlin's Sun Dao cannon was the same. Wu Yu has cultivated an indestructible body, and he also has an inner Vajra Buddha. Both his inner and outer bodies are forged by the burning of the Vajra fire. He is least afraid of the burning of the fire, so the power of Zhang Junlin's Taoism is almost not a big threat to Wu Yu. If it were other types, it would be difficult for Wu Yu. This is why Wu Yu dared to rush directly from the opponent's Taoism. Wu Yu's appearance immediately changed Zhang Junlin's face. This is when he was not prepared. That Wu Yu was like a meteorite descending to the world, smashing down with a bang. The demon-suppressing stick was rolling with anger, and his eyes were shining like a golden god of war, invincible. 9 dragons coiling pillar. At this moment, Wu Yu shocked everyone even more. In that underground space, most of the time of cultivation was spent on thinking about the newborn yin and yang qi sword, but there were times when there was no progress. Whenever this happened, Wu Yu turned to the 9 dragons coiling pillar technique. Because of his sufficient mana, he could easily cultivate this Taoist art that suits him to perfection. It has been a while since he got the 9 dragons pillar. At that time, Situ Minglang was able to cultivate a Taoist art within a year, so Wu Yu's speed was not too fast. Now, the demon-subduing stick has reached perfection. A total of 9 divine dragons composed of flames are coiled around it. In anger, they roar in unison, shaking the world for a while, and the power of the 9 dragons descends. This chapter is not finished yet, please click on the next page to continue reading the exciting content. Wow! The true power of the 9 dragon pan pillars made even the disciples unable to help but burst into an uproar. Even, spontaneously admire. Now that the 9 dragons are gathered together, the true power of this Taoist technique is truly released, which is at least twice as powerful as the 4 dragons coil pillar. 9 dragons descended from the sky and hit Zhang Junlin with a stick. Zhang Junlin fell from the upper hand to the lower hand in an instant. For a moment, life and death were unpredictable. Wu Yu. Zhang Junlin's face changed greatly. He was suppressed again, and his face showed a sinister look. He saw his whole body suddenly change, rolling in front of Wu Yu's eyes. In just a short moment, he transformed from a human into a golden spherical rock, extremely hard. That's really like what Xuanhuan said about a turtle shell. This is the ability brought to him by the immortal root. It must be the ability of the powerful golden body of the great sun. Whoosh! The golden sphere, which is Zhang Junlin's body, actually started to rotate crazily. The speed could not be seen clearly with the naked eye. As it rotated, the golden light shone, forming aura, and shot out in all directions, annihilating all the surrounding rocks and trees. Into dust. Boom! The 9 dragon coil pillars crashed down, and a stick made a tearing sound. Bang! Everyone saw with their own eyes that the golden sphere transformed by Zhang Junlin was directly smashed into the ground by Wu Yu. The entire sphere sank into the soil, even at least a foot deep. Zhang Junlin was defeated. This is a question. After all, everyone knows that Zhang Junlin's golden body of great power is quite difficult to break. It is not an exaggeration to say that it is a turtle shell. At this moment, the crazily rotating ball underneath rushed out, retreated, and then quickly transformed into Zhang Junlin, except that his hair was messy, his face was pale, and he looked a little embarrassed. However, his whole body was no serious injuries were sustained. 9 dragons and pillars didn't break his powerful golden body. Wu Yu was a little stunned. He was quite confident in his own technique, but he didn't expect an accident. From the 4 dragon pan pillars to the 9 dragon pan pillars, there has been a lot of progress. Wu Yu, it's your turn. Now, you have run out of skills. The embarrassed Zhang Junlin couldn't help but laugh. Wu Yu's strongest attack failed to break his defense. From what he meant, look, it's his turn next. It seems that he is very similar to Wu Yu, physically very powerful. Boom! The Baoguang tower flew over and landed in his hand. Zhang Junlin spat. In his other hand, the gilded ruler also appeared again. The disciples of the Tongtian sword sect had an ominous premonition in their hearts when they saw this battle. Zhang Junlin withstood the most terrifying attack and indeed had a good chance of winning. Next, it depends on whether Wu Yu can hold on. Most people think this way. But at this time, Wu Yu did something that no one expected. He seemed completely unaware of the seriousness of the situation. Instead, he turned around and said to Su Yanli in a relaxed manner, "Senior Sister Su, can you put the Lirijin Liu lend me a moment?" It is said that more advanced magic weapons will recognize their owners and cannot be used by outsiders, but ordinary magic weapons do not have such restrictions. Okay, Su Yanli didn't think much and directly sent the magic weapon in his hand to Wu Yu. Wu Yu held the golden sword and inserted the demon subduing stick on the ground. When he looked at Zhang Junlin again, a sneer appeared on the corner of his mouth. "I haven't used the sword for a long time, Zhang Junlin, you are the first person who asked me to use the sword again." In fact, many people have never seen Wu Yu use a sword. However, he has actually practiced swordplay since he was a child, and now this Lirijin Liu is in his hand, and it can be regarded as like an arm. Pretend to be a ghost, Zhang Junlin smiled disdainfully. He is fast, but Wu Yu is faster. Among the 3 sources of energy, the yin and yang mana forged by the great heavenly magic is constantly rolling like a raging torrent. Wu Yu seemed to have returned to the underground, with only that pure sword in his heart. The newborn yin-yang one-chi sword. He had never used it against anyone before, so he didn't know its power, but Wu Yu was extremely confident that the lethality of this Taoist technique would definitely exceed that of the 9 dragon pan pillar. It is a real fatal killing technique. When heaven and earth were born, yin and yang came together, and the sword ruled the sky. This is the essence of the sword immortal. As soon as the sword came out, Feng Shui's eyes lit up. He saw the temperament of a sword cultivator in Wu Yu. Wu Yu is not pure, but diverse. One sword, swing your hand, and thrust out. One person and one sword, move forward bravely without any hindrance, approaching Zhang Junlin. Kill. Zhang Junlin sneered again, trying to change the golden ball and spin it crazily again to destroy Wu Yu's attack. But this time, in his eyes, that ordinary sword was like the world opening up, yin and yang being born, and everything disintegrating under the sword. All around, there is endless emptiness. Sword of one qi. With one stab, it was not shaken away by the golden sphere, but actually stabbed in. Ah! Zhang Junlin screamed. The golden ball was shattered, and what everyone saw was that Wu Yu's Lirijin Liu penetrated Zhang Junlin's Tanzong A appointment, directly piercing one of his magic sources. That Zhang Junlin's face was ashen and extremely miserable. /U003CE /U003E /U003CE /U003F. Follow the official QQ public account 17K, ID, Love 17K, to read first and get the latest information at any time. /U003C/E /U003E /U003C/E /U003E. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Heaven Swallowing Record. Author, Fengqing Yang. Chapter 119. Chapter 118. Mysterious Immortal Root. The newly born Yin and Yang sword possesses a mystery that Wu Yu has not yet been able to fully understand. Now he can only be regarded as a small success, he can barely perform it, but he can't really mean it. But even so, it still gave him extraordinary attack power. He combined all his magic power with the huge physical power to achieve a piercing effect, piercing through the great sun's golden body that Zhang Junlin was most proud of. This is a fierce sword technique. The power of ancient Taoism is indeed extraordinary. As I write this, I hope readers will remember our domain name Taiwan Novel Network rightward arrow. Wu Yu won in an instant. Therefore, the scene at this time, Zhang Junlin's scream when his magic source collapsed, and Wu Yu's indifference were all a shock to the soul. Accepted. Wu Yu drew out the Lirijin Liu and kicked Zhang Junlin out, rolling him down in front of Zhang Xie. The victory or defeat has been decided. Not only did Wu Yu decide the winner, he even destroyed one of Zhang Junlin's magic sources. This was almost second only to killing the opponent. After destroying the magic source of the opponent's Tanzong point, it means that one of the opponent's magic sources collapses, the magic power dissipates, and the strength drops to the fourth level of the Qi condensation realm. The most important thing is that although he can continue to condense the remaining Dharma sources in the future, it will always be a pity here at the Tanzong point. If Zhang Junlin has the qualifications to condense the 10 sources and form a golden elixir, then because without a relationship with a magic source, he would always be able to stay at the 9th level of the Qi condensation realm, unable to form pills. To step into the golden elixir avenue, you must have a complete set of 10 sources. Of course, Wu Yu heard that after the source of the law was abolished, if he could get a certain kind of immortal spirit with 2 spiritual patterns and refine it into a pill called Zhuyuan Dan, he could destroy the magic source. The magic source and spiritual orifice are restored, and Qi can be condensed again. But the problem is that elixirs like Yuan Juten are worth hundreds of Qi condensing dans, and most people don't have them. Sorry, the sword has no eyes and is difficult to grasp. However, I think Sect Master Zhang should have the Yuan Ju Dan. So Zhang Junlin, you don't have to be sad, Wu Yu said lightly. He lived up to expectations and successfully completed the task. It was only then that the disciples of the Tongtian sword sect started cheering crazily. Zhang Junlin, who was in pain as he watched the place rolling, really felt better and better as he watched. The previous depression in his heart was completely gone. When he looked at Wu Yu again, he already felt a sense of admiration and respect in his heart. Wu Yu defeated the enemy with one sword. For them, this surprise was too big. Of course, Zhang Junlin provoked himself and used his immortal roots to bully everyone. This was asking for trouble, and no one wanted to sympathize with him. The conflicts of generations have accumulated to this day. Wu Yu looked at Zhang Xie's expression. His son had been deprived of a source of law. His eyes were indifferent and indifferent. But when he looked at him, Wu Yufang could feel that he had an astonishing murderous intention in his heart. This is a start. King's Landing. Behind Zhang Xie, several people came out and helped Zhang Junlin up. Their eyes were all burning, and they were obviously on the verge of breaking out. The overwhelming pressure was suppressing Wu Yu's body. Zhang Junlin opened his eyes in confusion. In pain, he looked at Wu Yu with extremely hateful eyes. He was defeated twice in a row. I am afraid that for him, it was a scar that could never be healed for the rest of his life. Today, my face has been wiped out, my dignity has been wiped out, and my self-confidence has also been wiped out. He even had the urge to cry. I just endured it. Lan Huayun was also stunned by Wu Yu's performance. At this time, she quickly stood up and said, Sect Master Zhang, when young people fight, they always don't know the severity of the fight. I hope that Master Zhang won't be offended. This Yuan Ju Dan, our Tongtian sword sect bear. Who said we have to bear the responsibility? Victory or defeat is a common thing for military strategists. Sect Master Zhang is so rich that he can't rival his country. Why does he still need a Yuan Ju Dan from us? Lan Huayun had just finished speaking over there when Feng Shui overpowered her words and said, it immediately opened everyone's eyes. It was only a matter of time before the two factions went to war. Today, Wu Yu won honor for the Tongtian sword sect, and Feng Shui didn't bother to be polite to Zhang Xie. The result was the same anyway. He knows Zhang Xie better than Lan Huayun. Haha, Zhang Xie over there laughed and said, Brother Feng is right. The younger generation is fighting, and the young people are full of energy. It is normal for such a result to occur. Our Xuanhuan Dao sect does not lack this Yuan gathering pill. Why do you have the nerve to ask for it? But it's really getting late and we have to go back. The seemingly polite words contained a lot of murderous intent. They left angrily. I'll see you off, Lan Huayun said enthusiastically. Thank you very much. Zhang Xie had just said this. When Wu Yu saw them supporting Zhang Junlin and about to leave, he said, Everyone, wait a minute, Zhang Junlin lost, and the bet hasn't been paid yet. Lan Huayun couldn't help but have a headache. Wu Yu and Feng Shui had the same personality, and the conflict between the two factions was so deep that Wu Yu almost destroyed Zhang Junlin, but he still wanted to ask for the qi condensation pill at this time. Oh, I almost forgot, the muscles on Zhang Xie's face visibly twitched, but they still looked tiny. Regardless of Zhang Junlin's objection, he took off his Meiji bag, counted it, and took it away. The other items were thrown into Wu Yu's hands and he said, there are 30 qi condensing pills inside, and together with this bag of rice, I'll give them to you. Thank you, Sect Master Zhang. Sect Master Zhang is indeed a man of his word. I admire him. Wu Yu smiled and put away the trophies. Zhang Xie glanced at him and said, the Bibo Mountains produce talents, and little brother Wu Yu will definitely be the pillar of the Tongtian sword sect in the future. The scenery of the Bibo Mountains is so good, I will come back next time. After all, this place is really charming. After saying this, they got on the crane horse one by one, while Lan Huayun and several elders got on the Tianyunpeng and took them away. After they left, only the Tongtian sword sect was left in Tuxian Terrace. Of people. This chapter is not finished yet, please click on the next page to continue reading the exciting content. Wu Yu, Wu Yu. For a moment, the disciples were extremely excited and swarmed over. Some picked Wu Yu up and threw him in the air, cheering. At this moment, the blue waves of the mountains, the enthusiasm and blood of Tongtian disciples made Wu Yu feel like he was at home. Turning around, Su Yanli and Feng Shui were both looking at him with smiles. Withdraw. Mo Shishu was the one who threw him up. At this time, he took the lead in throwing up Wu Yu, and then led others to move away, causing Wu Yu to almost fall into the mud. Ha ha! Everyone laughed. It's not ridicule, it's joy, recognition. Cultivation is one thing, and courage is another. Today, Wu Yu used his courage to win back dignity for everyone. Everyone go back and practice. Wu Yu, follow me to the Tongtian Immortal Palace. Finally, Feng Shui lifted Wu Yu up among the crowd, threw it on the sword, flew with the sword, and took Wu Yu to the Tongtian Immortal Palace. Sitting on this giant sword, facing the changing winds, lightning, and thunder, Wu Yu suddenly felt heroic in his heart. One day in the future, I will fly with a sword like this and conquer the world. This is his first goal. Becoming an immortal requires several steps. Stepping onto the golden elixir road and possessing elixir fire to refine elixirs is the first step. Liuri Jinliu has been returned to Su Yanli. Today's battle made Wu Yu realize his talent in sword training again. After arriving at Tongtian Immortal Palace, Feng Shui looked back at Wu Yu and said, "It's because Shentu and I didn't think carefully about the matter in Xianyuan Valley that you suffered." Wu Yu shook his head and said, "Master, this is not considered suffering. I have never encountered a real crisis since I started practicing Taoism. This time is also a kind of experience. Besides, the path to immortality is inherently difficult. I can survive the crisis and gain something, it couldn't be better. I'm very happy that you can think so." Feng Shui paced in front of him with his hands behind his back. He was obviously worried. After a while, he said, "The ancient Taoist technique you performed today must be protected. I have seen you perform it. What is its name?" "The newborn yin-yang one-chi sword." Hearing the name, he thought for a moment and said, "Since it is ancient Taoism, it has a long history. I estimate that you can still play a huge role in the Jindan Avenue in the future. To tell you the truth, I have some research on swordsmanship. The mystery of this Taoist technique should have surpassed all the Golden Dan Taoist techniques I have mastered. Golden Elixir Taoism surpasses ordinary Taoism and is even more terrifying." Feng Shui actually said that the newborn yin-yang chi sword surpassed all the Tao techniques he had mastered. Wu Yu took a deep breath. He didn't expect this technique to be so powerful. "You need to use it well and don't let that senior down," Feng Shui said. Wu Yu thought about it. The ghost-faced ape said that the Tongtian sword sect was facing a crisis, and Zhang Xie's provocation today also made Wu Yu realize that the Tongtian sword sect would be troubled in the future, and Feng Shui was bearing a lot of pressure. He then said, "Master, how about I tell you this formula so that you can also practice it and increase your strength?" Feng Shui saved his life several times and changed his life. Not to mention an ancient Taoist technique, Wu Yu was willing to give him even something better in return for his kindness. However, Feng Shui shook his head decisively and said, "Don't be joking. I, Feng Shui, am a master and will never take anything from my apprentice." He was resolute and there should be no negotiation. Wu Yu thought of his temper and stopped insisting. Feng Shui is a trustworthy person. Since he decided to accept him as his disciple, he may have treated him as a relative. The newborn yin-yang chi sword still requires yin-yang mana. Even if it is given to master, he probably won't be able to learn it. Only then did Wu Yu remember this. He remembered something else, and quickly took out the spar that looked like a fairy root, handed it into Feng Shui's hands, and told Feng Shui what he had learned. "Master, what is this?" Wu Yu wanted him to identify it. Feng Shui frowned and studied for a long time. His face changed several times. Generally speaking, he was happy. He said, "You should be a blessing in disguise. Although, as far as I know, a fairy root cannot be preserved for such a long time, it is even less likely that after being planted, it will revert to the appearance of a fairy root. However, This crystal is indeed producing meanings that only fairy roots can have, and this is definitely an extraordinary fairy root. It's just that even I have never seen the existence of such immortal roots, but I guess that this is the most precious thing left by that senior, more precious than ancient Taoism. Real. Wu Yu was worried, not knowing how to get the immortal root. You have a long time to study. When you reach the 5th level of Qi condensation realm, I will give you other immortal roots to choose from. In the end, it depends on you whether you choose it. After all, it is still possible. It is not it's a fairy root. If you don't plant a fairy root, you'll be in trouble. Feng Xian needs Wu Yu to consider this matter himself. Of course, it still takes a long time, so there seems to be no need to rush. \U003CE \U003E \U003CE \U003F. Follow the official QQ public account 17K, ID, Love 17K, to read first and get the latest information at any time \U003C/E \U003E \U003C/E \U003E. Heaven Swallowing Record. Author, Fengqing Yang. Chapter 120. How about I help you do some research during this period, Feng Shui said. Wu Yu then handed the immortal root to Feng Shui. The matter of immortal roots is of great importance, so it would be better for him to think about it more clearly. Today I saw you use the primordial yin and yang qi sword. It is actually as powerful as you using the demon subduing stick. This shows that you actually also have the talent to use the sword. And if this thing is the immortal root, because it is in the shape of a sword, if you plant it in the future, you may still be able to take the sword root. If you are good at two types of attack weapons and they don't conflict with each other, that would be the best. Yes. Wu Yu also had something in mind. Although the most suitable type is the demon subduing stick, if he practices the sword again, it may not affect his use of the demon subduing stick. I really don't have any magic weapons like sticks in my hands, but if I say magic weapons and long swords, I have quite a few. When you reach the 5th level of Qi condensation realm, I will give you one. It's worth 20 demon suppressing sticks. A sword twice as big as that, Feng Shui said suddenly. Wu Yu was overjoyed and said, "Thank you so much, Master." The demon suppressing stick was given by him, and a sword that is 20 times more powerful is also a favor. Wu Yu now doesn't know how he should repay him. As if he understood what Wu Yu was thinking, Feng Shui said, "You and I are destined. What I want to see most now is that you grow up safely and even surpass me. If I fail, I will have to rely on your generation." Came to take charge of the Tongtian sword section. Master, I will definitely make further progress. Feng Shui's monastic career has not come to an end yet. You go down. Wu Yu could roughly tell that there was something on Feng Shui's mind, and he could also guess it. However, his current self cannot help with such big things at all, so practicing hard is his only way. Disciple takes leave. He returned to Kishan Peak, and as soon as he arrived at his fairy beast garden, he saw a person he hadn't seen for a long time. It was Qing Mang. "Wu Yu, you are really like a dragon. This time I really thought you were dead and I cried for you for several days." "You bastard is alive again," Qing Mang said angrily. "It looks quite cute. She is very talented and has reached the 10th level of Qi condensation realm, the realm of divine connection. As time passed, she grew up a lot and became a lively and charming girl. Wu Yu came back from Suqiao last time and entered the Immortal Valley not long before he had time to see her. To put it into perspective, we haven't seen each other for more than a year. Today I saw you defeat Zhang Junlin. It was so majestic. You are such a monster. I originally wanted to practice hard and defeat you in the future. But now that I think about it, I, Qing Mang, am really just dreaming." Wu Yu was in a good mood when he saw her. The two reminisced about old times and walked among the mountains and woods. Talking about the changes in the past 2 years. I heard that you and Lan Shuiyu are together, is it true? Qingmang asked. No. I'm just telling you, the last time I saw Lan Shuiyu, he was very arrogant and weird, and not worthy of you. Haha. To Wu Yu, Qingmang was indeed much cuter than Lan Shuiyu. The two sat on a piece of bluestone until late at night, chatting happily. At night, Qingmang looked at the vast blue mountains with a vague look of worry in her eyes. She stared at Wu Yu and asked, Wu Yu, tell me, will he die soon? I heard that the Tongtian sword sect should be destroyed. There was youthful fear in her voice. Why do you say that? Wu Yu asked seriously. Don't you know? It's because of the spiritual energy that was born in the Bibo Mountains that others were jealous. The 7 ghosts of the Red Sea from the East China Sea joined forces with the Xuanhuan Dao section later. There was a 1,000-year-old demon belt who possessed the demon elixir. There are many demons forming a tripartite force to carve up our Tongtian sword section. I also heard that the reason why the 7 ghosts of the Red Sea got involved was because you killed their disciples. Oh. Wu Yu finally understood the crisis that the Tongtian sword sect was facing now. A common man is not guilty, but he is guilty of having a jade. The ghost-faced ape must not say that the Tongtian sword sect is going to be doomed. Zhongyuan Daozong, the 7 ghosts of the Red Sea, the Millennium Demon. I did kill their disciples, but obviously, this was their excuse, Wu Yu said. Today Zhongyuan Daozong came to clarify. Do you believe it? Qingmang asked. Wu Yu shook his head and said, of course I don't believe it, I'm afraid I'm just here to show off my power. No wonder the master has been so serious recently, and the atmosphere in the Bibo Mountains has become so heavy. It turns out that there are so many enemies invisibly. I don't believe it either. It is said that the Zhongyuan Dao sect wants to occupy the mountain gate, and the 7 ghosts of the Red Sea want all our cultivation resources, magical weapons, Taoist techniques, etc. I don't know what the newly joined Millennium Demon wants. Qingmang's voice was a little hollow. Like other disciples of the Tongtian sword sect, she had a certain fear in her heart about this upcoming embarrassment. After all, they are all too young. It can be expected that those 3 terrifying parties may bring a disaster to the peaceful Bibo Mountains and their home, leaving corpses everywhere and rivers of blood flowing here. That ghost-faced ape is the subordinate of this 1,000-year-old demon, isn't it? I heard, yes. Wu Yu, I want to ask you, it is said that the other disciples of the immortal Fate Valley were eaten by demons, right? Qingmang shrank into a ball, probably thinking of that scene. His body couldn't help but tremble a little, and his face turned pale. Well. At this moment, Wu Yu felt as if he had been hit hard. He also thought of those compatriots who were killed. They are not bad, they are all passionate young people with some infinite respect for the future. However, they were all killed and eaten one by one before his eyes. The splattered blood is probably hatred and war. Yes, Wu Yu couldn't deceive him. He had also fought in the mortal world. When the spiritual energy fountain appeared, Feng Xiai was already facing a formidable enemy. He expected that this 4-party war, a battle of life and death, would be inevitable. It will come. I'm afraid. Qingmang turned sideways and hugged Wu Yu. His face was pale, his shoulders were trembling, and there were tears in his eyes. Perhaps, many young disciples are like her. Many handyman disciples have already fled here. If I were still a handyman, I could still escape. But now I can't leave, and I don't want to leave, but I really don't want to die like this. Her voice was choked up. She was usually quite bold, but now she was the same, let alone others. Don't worry. Wu Yu didn't know how to comfort her. This was destined to be a fatal battle in which he could not influence the situation. The next day, the sun rose as usual. Wu Yu sent Qingmang back to Wangtian Peak, and suddenly thought of Ghost Ji's bag of rice. He had wanted to give it to Qingmang for a long time, but he just didn't have time. When he took out Ghost G's bag of rice, he hung it back and said, "This is the bag of rice belonging to Ghost G, a disciple of the 7 ghosts of the Red Sea. I wanted to give it to you, but after thinking about it, I decided not to give it to you. Got it?" "Why, I want it." Qing Mang knew how precious this thing was. Wu Yu smiled and said, "The ghost girl used this to hold corpses, severed hands and feet, and many other filthy things." Ah, this startled Qing Mang, and he quickly stopped wanting it. Wu Yu smiled and took out another bag of qi, which he won from Zhang Junlin yesterday. The qi condensing pill inside had been taken away by Wu Yu. Wu Yu took out 2 more qi condensing pills and put them into this. He handed it to Qing Mang in the Miji bag and said, "I wish you can reach the qi condensation realm as soon as possible." "Thank you." Wu Yu, Qing Mang swept away the hesitation of last night and cheered. Seeing that she had regained her vitality, Wu Yu was also very satisfied, but he knew in his heart that if the Tongtian sword sect did not survive the difficulties for one day, this happiness would only be short-lived. The cloud of sorrow still hangs over everyone's head on this blue wave mountain. A few days later, Wu Yu, Su Yanli, and Mo Shishu mentioned things about the Xuanhuan Taoist sect, ghost cultivators, and demons. Su Yanli and Mo Shishu looked at each other. Su Yanli pursed her lips with a worried look on her face, but said firmly, "Junior brother, this is a matter between Master and the elders. At our level, we cannot influence the situation of the battle. The only task Master gives us is to strengthen ourselves. Even if we lose, we will avenge the Tongtian sword sect and take back our homeland in the future." "Is this the only way?" Wu Yu was a little unwilling. Feng Shui was too kind to him, and he always felt that he could do something. Sun Wudao was very kind to him once, but it was a pity that he had no chance to repay him. Mo Shishu chuckled and said, "Junior brother, don't worry. If it comes to that, we will still go out to fight. When the time comes, if one comes, we will kill one, if 2 come, we will kill a pair." "Stop talking nonsense." Su Yanli shook his head. "Regarding this matter, I am afraid that no one has an answer in their hearts. Junior brother, I know it's hard to feel like you can't help, but, we were never different from you. Master has been so kind to us. I grew up here, and Master is my reborn parent. All the brothers and sisters here are my brothers and sisters. How can I bear to see monsters and monsters wreaking havoc here?" Su Yanli looked at the scorching sun rising in the east, with deep determination in her eyes, which was the determination to fight to the end. "Okay, if you have to fight hard, add me. Anyway, old man Feng gave me this bad life." Mo Shishu waved his folding fan, looking indifferent. "I'm going back first." Wu Yu said goodbye. "What are you going to do?" Mo Shishu asked. "Practice, repay kindness. Fight to the death." This was Wu Yu's answer. No matter how much power he had, he wanted to do everything he could to defend this land that belonged to the sword cultivator. /U003CE /U003E /U003CE /U003F. Follow the official QQ account 17K, ID, Love 17K, read early, and keep abreast of the latest information. /U003C/E /U003E /U003C/E /U003E